The single text message glowed on Rebecca Wilson's phone like a digital slap across the face. Don't come home tonight. Or ever. I want a divorce. 15 years of marriage reduced to 11 cold words. As she stood frozen in the grocery store aisle, a package of Thomas's pasta clutched in her trembling hand, Rebecca had no idea that her husband's cruel dismissal would become his greatest mistake, one that would cost him everything he thought he could protect, and leave his high-priced lawyer staring at her evidence in stunned silence just 24 hours later. Rebecca Morgan Wilson stared at her phone, reading the message for the 5th time, willing the words to rearrange themselves into something that made sense. She was supposed to be picking up ingredients for the anniversary dinner she had planned, 16 years together, 15 married. The pasta fell from her hand, landing with a dull thud on the supermarket floor. "Ma'am? Are you okay?" A teenage employee touched her elbow gently, concern etched across his face. Rebecca looked up, disoriented. Yes. Sorry." She bent down to retrieve the package, her movements mechanical. Her mind raced as she abandoned her half-filled cart and walked to her car on unsteady legs. Inside her silver Volvo, Rebecca finally allowed the tears to come. She gripped the steering wheel, her wedding ring catching the afternoon sunlight that streamed through the windshield. The diamond that had once symbolized James's promise to love her forever now felt like a mockery. But as the initial shock began to subside, something else stirred within Rebecca. A suspicion that had been lurking at the edges of her consciousness for months, one she had repeatedly pushed away out of trust and loyalty to her husband. She took a deep breath, wiped her eyes, and started the engine. But instead of driving home to the colonial-style house in Brookline where she and James had built their life, she headed to her best friend Megan's apartment in Cambridge. "He did what?" Megan exclaimed an hour later, after Rebecca showed her the text. They sat at Megan's kitchen island, mugs of untouched tea growing cold between them. "After 15 years, he doesn't even have the decency to tell you to your face?" Rebecca nodded, her initial devastation giving way to an eerie calm. "I think he's been having an affair with Sophia Diaz from his office. The late meetings, the weekend conferences, the new cologne." Megan's eyes widened. "The marketing director? The one who was at your Christmas party last year?" "That's the one." Rebecca pulled out her phone again, scrolling through photos. She was wearing a silver necklace with a small diamond pendant that night. 2 weeks later, I found the receipt in James's jacket pocket when I was doing laundry. He claimed it was a gift for his mother. His mother who hates jewelry and only wears her wedding band? Megan scoffed. "Rebecca, what are you going to do?" Rebecca stared into the distance, her mind already shifting into analytical mode, the same precision thinking that had made her a successful financial advisor at Morgan Stanley. "I'm not going to do what he expects." "Which is what?" "Fall apart. Beg him to reconsider. Show up at home crying and pleading." She shook her head. "That's exactly what he wants, for me to be emotional while he stays calm and calculated." Rebecca straightened her shoulders. "But James forgot who he married. I deal with numbers and strategies for a living. And I've learned one thing from 15 years of handling other people's money: when someone tries to hide assets, they always leave a trail." Megan leaned forward. "What are you thinking?" "First, I need somewhere to stay. Can I crash here for a few days?" "Of course. As long as you need." Megan squeezed her friend's hand. "My guest room is yours." "Second, I need a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, the best divorce attorney in Boston." Rebecca pulled her laptop from her bag. "And third, I need to document everything before James has a chance to hide anything." Rebecca spent the next hour making calls and sending emails. By 8 p.m., she had an appointment with Patricia Danvers, one of the city's most formidable divorce attorneys, for 9 a.m. the next morning. She had also compiled a list of their joint accounts, investment portfolios, properties, and other assets. "James thinks he's so clever with money," Rebecca muttered, typing furiously on her laptop. "But he forgets I can see right through his financial maneuvers." "Has he been hiding money?" Megan asked, peering over her shoulder. "Let's just say James has been making some questionable transfers over the past 6 months. Small amounts to an account I didn't recognize." Rebecca's mouth set in a grim line. "At the time, I convinced myself it was for a surprise or an investment he wanted to tell me about later. Now I know better." Her phone buzzed with another text from James. "I'll be staying at a hotel tonight. We can talk logistics when you've calmed down." Rebecca laughed bitterly. "Calmed down? I haven't even responded to his first text." She turned the phone screen toward Megan. "He's already got a script in his head about how this is going to go. The hysterical wife, the reasonable husband who needs space. Are you going to answer him?" Rebecca thought for a moment, then typed, "I won't be coming home tonight either." Please don't contact me again except through my attorney. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. Wow, Megan whispered. That's going to throw him for a loop. Good. Rebecca closed her laptop. Because while he's wondering what's happening, I'll be getting everything in order. That night, sleep eluded Rebecca. She tossed and turned in Megan's guest bed, her mind replaying the past year of her marriage, seeing all the signs she had missed, or chosen to ignore. The diminishing intimacy. The sudden business trips. The way James had begun password protecting his phone after years of leaving it unlocked. By 5 a.m., she gave up on sleep and got out of bed. Moving quietly so as not to wake Megan, Rebecca made coffee and returned to her laptop. She logged into their joint investment account, taking screenshots of all holdings and recent transactions. Then she accessed their shared Google Drive, where they kept digital copies of important documents, their house deed, car titles, insurance policies, and tax returns. She methodically downloaded everything, saving copies to her personal cloud storage. If James was planning to lock her out of their accounts, he'd be too late. At 7 a.m., Rebecca remembered something else, the home security system. They had installed cameras last year, one at the front door, one at the back, and one in the main hallway. The footage was stored on a cloud server that both she and James could access. Please don't let him have changed the password, she muttered, logging into the security company's website. To her relief, her credentials still worked. She quickly scrolled through recent recordings and froze when she saw footage from the previous evening. James entering their home at 7:30 p.m., not alone but with a woman Rebecca immediately recognized as Sophia Diaz. The timestamp showed them staying for 2 hours before leaving together, Sophia carrying a small overnight bag. Rebecca's hand shook as she downloaded the video. They had been in her house, their house, just hours after James had told her not to come home. The audacity of it stole her breath. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Rebecca, this is Sophia. James told me about your situation. I just want you to know we never meant to hurt you. Rebecca stared at the message in disbelief. Our situation? Our situation, she said aloud to the empty room. She started to type a scathing reply, then stopped herself. This was exactly what they wanted, to provoke her, to make her look unreasonable. Instead, she took a screenshot of the message and added it to her growing file of evidence. By the time Rebecca arrived at Patricia Danvers' office in downtown Boston, she had compiled a comprehensive digital folder documenting James's affair, his financial deceptions, and the timeline of their deteriorating marriage. Patricia Danvers was not what Rebecca had expected. Instead of the stern, intimidating figure she had imagined, Patricia was a warm, grandmotherly woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair and keen blue eyes that missed nothing. Mrs. Wilson, she said, extending her hand. I'm sorry about the circumstances that bring you here. Thank you for seeing me on such short notice, Rebecca replied as they sat down in Patricia's elegantly appointed office. Your email was quite detailed, Patricia said, opening a folder on her desk. You mentioned having evidence of both infidelity and financial misconduct? Rebecca nodded, opening her laptop. My husband, James Wilson, is the CEO of Wilson Tech Solutions. We've been married for 15 years. Yesterday, he sent me a text telling me not to come home and that he wants a divorce. She turned the screen toward Patricia, showing the message. I see. Patricia's expression remained professionally neutral, but Rebecca detected a flicker of disapproval. And you believe he's been having an affair? I don't just believe it. Rebecca pulled up the security footage. This is from our home security camera last night, hours after he told me not to come home. That's Sophia Diaz, his company's marketing director. Patricia watched the video silently, her eyes narrowing slightly as James and Sophia entered the house, his hand resting possessively on the small of her back. And the financial evidence? Patricia asked when the video ended. Rebecca switched to her spreadsheet. James has been transferring funds to this account for the past 6 months. She pointed to a series of transactions, approximately $5,000 every 2 weeks, totaling just over $60,000 so far. The account is at First National Bank, but it's not one I recognize or have access to. Do you have any idea what this money might be for? Initially, no. But this morning, I did some digging. Rebecca pulled up property records from a neighboring county. 2 months ago, someone purchased a lakefront cabin in Sophia Diaz's name. The down payment matches the total amount James had transferred by that point. Patricia's eyebrows rose. You're quite thorough, Mrs. Wilson. I'm a financial advisor. Following money trails is what I do. Rebecca hesitated. There's something else. Last night, I also found these. She opened another file, screenshots of emails between James and Sophia dating back 8 months. Some were explicitly romantic. Others discussed their future together. "Where did you obtain these emails?" Patricia asked, her tone careful. "James and I have shared a family computer for years. He never logged out of his Gmail account." Rebecca met the lawyer's gaze steadily. "I know it might seem invasive, but these were on a device I have equal access to." Patricia nodded slowly. "These will be useful, though the court's view on such evidence can vary. Now, tell me what you want from this divorce, Rebecca." Rebecca took a deep breath. "I want what's fair. I supported James when he started his company. I put my own career advancement on hold. I managed our household, our social calendar, our investments. I've been both a wife and an unpaid CEO consultant for 15 years. Her voice grew stronger. "I don't want to destroy him, but I won't be discarded and cheated out of what I helped build." "Fair enough." Patricia made some notes. "What about your house? Other major assets?" "The house is in both our names, purchased 10 years ago. We have investment portfolios worth approximately $2.8 million, retirement accounts, and James's company, which was recently valued at around $20 million for a potential investment deal." Patricia looked up sharply. "His company is currently being valued for investment? Is that in writing anywhere?" Rebecca nodded, pulling up another document. "Term sheet from venture partners. They're considering a $5 million investment for a 15% stake, which values the company at $20.3 million. James mentioned it at dinner 2 weeks ago. I found the actual document in our home office last month." "This is extremely relevant information," Patricia said, studying the document, "especially if Mr. Wilson attempts to undervalue his business during divorce proceedings, which, frankly, happens in almost every case involving a privately owned company." For the next hour, they discussed strategy. By the time Rebecca left Patricia's office, they had a clear plan. Patricia would file for divorce immediately, before James had a chance to do so. They would request comprehensive financial disclosures, temporary maintenance payments, and continued access to all joint accounts. "We're going to move quickly," Patricia said as she walked Rebecca to the door. "I'll have the initial paperwork filed by this afternoon. In the meantime, document everything, save all communications from both James and Sophia, and don't discuss any details with anyone except me." Rebecca nodded, feeling a strange mix of grief and determination. "When will James be notified?" "He'll be served with papers tomorrow morning," Patricia replied with a small smile. "I have a feeling he's not expecting you to be so proactive." As Rebecca walked back to her car, her phone rang. James's name flashed on the screen. After a moment's hesitation, she answered. "Rebecca," James said, his voice carrying that professional smoothness he used during business negotiations. "I think we need to talk in person. This text exchange isn't productive." "I told you to contact me through my attorney," Rebecca replied coolly. A pause. "You already have an attorney? That seems premature. We haven't even discussed terms." "There's nothing to discuss, James. You made your decision when you moved your girlfriend into our house hours after telling me not to come home." Another, longer pause. "You've been spying on me?" Rebecca almost laughed. "It's not spying when it's my house too. But don't worry, I'm respecting your request. I won't be coming home, to a place where you betrayed our marriage in the most intimate way possible." "Rebecca, you're being emotional. Let's talk when you've calmed down. I'm prepared to be generous in the settlement." "Generous?" This time she did laugh, a short, harsh sound. "That's thoughtful of you, James. I'll be sure to tell my lawyer about your generosity when we meet to review my divorce filing tomorrow." "You're filing?" "Rebecca, slow down. You don't want this to get ugly." "No, James, you don't want this to get ugly. But it's too late for that. You made it ugly when you started sleeping with your marketing director. You made it ugly when you started siphoning money to buy her a love nest. You made it ugly when you texted me not to come home to my own house after 15 years of marriage. How did you?" James stopped himself. "Look, I can explain the financial transfers. They're not what you think. Save it for your lawyer, James. Mine will be in touch." Rebecca ended the call, her heart racing but her mind clear. She had just reached Megan's apartment when her phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from James's personal account, with the subject line, "Please read settlement proposal." Rebecca opened the attachment. It was a PDF outlining what James considered a fair division of their assets. He would keep the house, his company, valued at only $5 million in the document, and 75% of their investment portfolio. Rebecca would receive a cash payment of $800,000 and a small vacation property they rarely used. She forwarded the email to Patricia with a simple message: "He's already trying to lowball me." Patricia's response came within minutes, as expected. "Don't engage. We're filing our petition with a complete asset list and supporting documentation this afternoon. He'll be served at 9 a.m. tomorrow." That night, Rebecca slept soundly for the first time since receiving James's text. The next morning, she dressed with special care in a charcoal gray suit she often wore for important client meetings. Today wasn't about looking good for others, it was about feeling powerful for herself. At precisely 9:15 a.m., her phone rang. It was Patricia. "James has been served," she reported. "And I just received a call from his attorney, Richard Hoffman. They'd like to meet this afternoon to discuss an amicable resolution." Rebecca smiled grimly. That was fast. Indeed. Hoffman is known for aggressive tactics, so this conciliatory approach suggests our filing caught them off guard. "I've agreed to a 3 p.m. meeting at my office. Can you be there?" "I wouldn't miss it for the world." When Rebecca arrived at Patricia's office that afternoon, she was surprised to see James already seated in the reception area, accompanied by a sharp-featured man in an expensive suit who had to be Richard Hoffman. James looked up as she entered, his expression a mixture of anger and something that might have been fear. "Rebecca," he said, standing. "You look well." She nodded curtly, not trusting herself to speak. A receptionist quickly led her to Patricia's office, where the attorney was reviewing documents. "Hoffman requested this meeting the moment he saw our filing," Patricia explained in a low voice. "Particularly the evidence regarding the company valuation and the financial transfers." "What's our strategy?" Rebecca asked. Patricia smiled, the expression of a chess player who sees checkmate several moves ahead. "Let them talk. The more they offer unprompted, the more we learn about what they're worried about." Minutes later, James and Richard Hoffman joined them in Patricia's conference room. Introductions were brief and tense. "Mrs. Wilson," Hoffman began, his voice smoothly professional, "we appreciate your willingness to meet so quickly. My client is eager to resolve this matter with minimal conflict." Patricia nodded. "We're always open to reasonable discussion, counselor." Hoffman placed a folder on the table. "We've prepared a revised settlement offer that we believe addresses the concerns in your filing." He slid the document toward Patricia. "Mr. Wilson is prepared to be quite generous." There was that word again, generous. Rebecca kept her face neutral as Patricia reviewed the new proposal. "This is certainly more substantial than the email sent yesterday," Patricia acknowledged. "But still significantly below what Massachusetts law would consider an equitable division after a 15-year marriage." Hoffman leaned forward. "My client is willing to be flexible on the financial terms, but we must address certain allegations in your filing. The implication that Mr. Wilson has hidden assets or undervalued his company is simply not supported by fact." Patricia raised an eyebrow. "No? Then perhaps your client can explain why the term sheet he showed to investors values Wilson Tech Solutions at $20.3 million, while the settlement proposal values it at only $5 million? James shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "The investment valuation is speculative. It assumes growth projections that may not materialize." "Interesting," Patricia replied. "And I suppose the $60,000 transferred to an account used to purchase a property for Sofia Diaz was also speculative?" Richard Hoffman's expression changed, his practiced smile faltering. "What property are you referring to?" Patricia opened her folder and slid several documents across the table: the transfer records, the property deed with Sofia's name, and screenshots from the security camera footage showing James and Sofia entering Rebecca and James's home. "We have comprehensive documentation of Mr. Wilson's affair with his employee, his financial maneuvers to support that relationship, and his attempts to undervalue assets," Patricia stated calmly. "Now, shall we discuss a truly equitable settlement, or would you prefer to continue this in court?" Richard Hoffman stared at the evidence, then turned to James with a look that clearly said, "You didn't tell me about any of this." Rebecca watched as the realization dawned on James's face. He had expected her to fall apart, to be so devastated by his betrayal that she would accept whatever crumbs he offered. Instead, she had outmaneuvered him at every turn. "Perhaps," Richard Hoffman said stiffly, "we should take a brief recess to confer." As they left the room, Rebecca caught James's eye. For the first time in their marriage, he was looking at her not with love or even indifference, but with something new, respect tinged with fear. And in that moment, Rebecca knew she had already won. The conference room felt different when James and Richard Hoffman returned 15 minutes later. The confident swagger in Hoffman's step was gone. James looked ashen, his normally immaculate appearance slightly disheveled. Mrs. Danvers, Hoffman began, his tone more subdued, my client would like to propose a more equitable settlement framework. Patricia nodded. We're listening. Mr. Wilson is prepared to transfer full ownership of the marital home to Mrs. Wilson, along with 50% of all investment and retirement accounts. Regarding Wilson Tech Solutions, we propose a one-time cash payment of $4 million to Mrs. Wilson, representing roughly 20% of the company's current valuation. Rebecca kept her face neutral, though internally she noted the sudden acknowledgement of the company's true value. That's a starting point, Patricia replied. However, it fails to address several key issues. First, my client contributed significantly to Wilson Tech's success, sacrificing her own career advancement. Second, the property purchased for Ms. Diaz using marital funds must be addressed. Third, we have concerns about potential undisclosed assets. James leaned forward. Rebecca, he said, addressing her directly, be reasonable. You know I built that company from the ground up. With my support, Rebecca replied evenly. My connections brought you your first 3 major clients. My income supported us when the company wasn't profitable. My healthcare benefits covered us both for the first 4 years. That doesn't entitle you to half my company, Patricia interjected. Massachusetts is an equitable distribution state, Mr. Wilson. Courts consider numerous factors, including length of marriage, contributions to marital assets, and misconduct that dissipates marital assets. She tapped the evidence folder. Such as using joint funds to purchase property for a paramour. Hoffman placed a restraining hand on James's arm. What would your client consider acceptable terms? Patricia consulted with Rebecca before responding. 50% of all liquid assets and retirement accounts. Full ownership of the marital home. And either a 30% stake in Wilson Tech Solutions or a one-time payment of $7 million. That's outrageous, James snapped. Is it? Let's consider what a judge might award after seeing evidence of your affair, the property purchase, and your attempt to hide assets. Not to mention the callous manner in which you informed Mrs. Wilson of your desire to end the marriage. We'll need time to consider this proposal, Hoffman finally said. Of course. We'll expect your response by tomorrow noon. After that, our offer expires, and we proceed with litigation. As they prepared to leave, Rebecca spoke directly to James. The security system alert on my phone shows you were at the house again last night, with her. Please remove her belongings from our home by tomorrow morning. James flushed. You're monitoring me now? No, James. I'm protecting what's legally mine until a court determines otherwise. The security company has been instructed to deny entry to anyone except me. I've changed the access codes. She walked out, leaving James sputtering behind her. In the elevator, Rebecca finally allowed herself a shaky breath. You did beautifully, Patricia said. Did you see Hoffman's expression when you mentioned the security system? Back at Megan's apartment, Rebecca found herself exhausted but unable to rest. She sat on the edge of the guest bed, finally allowing herself to feel the full weight of what was happening. 15 years of marriage. Gone. The future she had planned. Gone. The trust she had placed in the person she thought would always protect her heart. Shattered. She picked up her phone and called her sister in Chicago. Becca? Emily's voice was instantly concerned. It's not like you to call on a workday. James is having an affair, Rebecca said without preamble. We're getting divorced. The silence lasted only a second before Emily exploded. That absolute bastard. Are you okay? Do you need me to come out there? Rebecca found herself smiling despite everything. Emily, for years younger and more hot-headed, had always been her fiercest defender. I'm handling it, Rebecca assured her. Actually, I'm more than handling it. I might be kind of destroying him. She gave Emily an abbreviated version of the past 24 hours. Holy shit, Becca, Emily breathed. You're my hero. Seriously. I don't feel like a hero, Rebecca admitted. I feel hollow. Of course you do. You've been blindsided by someone you trusted completely. But you know what? That emptiness is going to fill up again. With pride in your strength. With new opportunities. With a life that doesn't include a cheating jackass. Around 7 p.m., Megan returned from her job as a pediatrician, carrying takeout containers. Italian comfort food, she announced. How'd it go with the lawyers? Rebecca filled her in while they ate. I still can't believe James thought he could just text you to disappear from your own life, Megan said, shaking her head. It's like he forgot who you are. I think he saw what he wanted to see, Rebecca replied. The supportive wife. The understanding partner. He never realized those qualities don't equal doormat. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unfamiliar number. Rebecca, it's Sophia. I know you don't want to hear from me, but there's something you should know about James. Rebecca stared at the message, torn between curiosity and disgust. Is that him? Megan asked. No. It's her. Rebecca turned the phone so Megan could see. Are you going to respond? Rebecca typed a quick reply. Any information relevant to my divorce should be directed to Patricia Danvers at Danvers Legal Group. She had barely set her phone down when it rang, Patricia's office. Rebecca, I've just received a rather unusual call from Sofia Diaz, Patricia said. She's requesting a meeting with us tomorrow. What? Why? She claims to have information about James that's relevant to your case. Normally, I'd dismiss this as manipulation, but she sounded genuinely distressed. Rebecca's mind raced. Do you think we should meet her? Cautiously, yes. Whatever her motivations, information is leverage. I suggested 10 a.m. at my office. I'll have my assistant present to witness everything. After hanging up, she turned to Megan. Apparently, James's girlfriend wants to give us dirt on him. Plot twist, Megan said, raising her eyebrows. Think it's a trap? I don't know, Rebecca admitted. But I'm going to find out. At 9:45 the next morning, Rebecca arrived at Patricia's office, dressed in another power suit. She'd applied her makeup carefully, determined to present strength regardless of how she felt inside. Patricia met her in reception. Sofia Diaz arrived 10 minutes ago. She's quite agitated. In a small conference room, Sofia sat fidgeting with a manila envelope. Rebecca's first thought was that she looked terrible. The polished marketing executive was gone, replaced by a woman with dark circles under her eyes and hair in a hasty ponytail. Mrs. Wilson, Sofia said, standing awkwardly. Thank you for meeting me. Ms. Diaz, Rebecca nodded coldly. You had something to tell us? I didn't know you were married when James and I started seeing each other. He told me he was divorced. Rebecca felt a flash of anger. We've been married for 15 years. You were in my home for Christmas last year. He said you were his ex-wife who he remained friends with. Sophia's voice was small. It sounds stupid now, but he had explanations for everything. Why you still lived together sometimes, co-ownership of the house. Why you still wore wedding rings, they were family heirlooms you both kept. And you believed this elaborate fiction? Sophia flushed. I wanted to believe him. But that's not why I'm here. 2 days ago, after you confronted him, James asked me to sign these. She pushed the manila envelope across the table. Inside were property transfer documents for the lakefront cabin, transferring ownership from Sophia to an LLC called Wilson Ventures. He said it was for tax purposes, Sophia continued. But when I looked up the LLC, it was registered in the Cayman Islands 3 months ago. Patricia examined the papers. This is a shell company, classic asset hiding strategy. There's more, Sophia said, pulling out her phone. I recorded our conversation yesterday when he was explaining why I needed to sign these. She pressed play. James's voice filled the room. Just sign the papers, Sophia. The cabin needs to be under the LLC before Rebecca's lawyers start digging. I've already moved most of the liquid assets offshore. Once the divorce is final, we can transfer everything back and move forward with our plans. Sophia's voice responded, I don't understand why we need to hide the cabin. You said it was a gift to me. It was, but legally it was purchased with marital assets. If Rebecca finds out, which she apparently already has, she could claim half its value. This way, it's protected. James, this feels wrong. Do you want to start our life together broke? Rebecca's out for blood. She's going to try to take everything I built. I'm just protecting what's ours. Patricia stopped the recording. Ms. Diaz, why are you sharing this with us? Sophia looked down at her hands. Because yesterday, I found out James has been lying to me about more than just his marital status. The money he used to buy the cabin? He told me it came from his personal savings. But I overheard him on the phone, talking about company funds he'd diverted. She looked up at Rebecca. I'm the chief marketing officer. I know that's embezzlement, and I want no part of it. Rebecca felt a cold shock. You're saying he used Wilson Tech Company funds, not just our personal marital assets? Sophia nodded. From what I could piece together, yes. There's a separate company account that only James has access to. He called it the Executive Discretionary Fund. Patricia was already making notes. Ms. Diaz, would you be willing to provide a formal statement about this conversation? Yes. And I brought the original cabin purchase documents that show where the money came from. I'm resigning from Wilson Tech today. Rebecca studied the woman across from her. She should hate this woman. Instead, she felt an unexpected twinge of sympathy. Did you love him? The question escaped before Rebecca could stop it. Sophia looked startled. I thought I did. Now I'm not sure I ever knew him. She hesitated. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Not just for the affair, but for believing his lies about you. He said you were cold, career-obsessed, uninterested in his life. Classic cheater's playbook, Patricia murmured. Rewrite the marriage narrative to justify the affair. After Sophia left, Patricia turned to Rebecca with a grim smile. This changes everything. If James has been embezzling from his own company, that opens up potential criminal liability. At minimum, it gives us leverage to push for a more favorable settlement. What's our next step? I'm going to call Richard Hoffman immediately. The embezzlement allegation is our nuclear option. We don't lead with it, but we make sure they know we have it. By the time Rebecca left Patricia's office, a new meeting had been scheduled with James and his attorney for 4 p.m. that same day. She decided to visit her own house for the first time since receiving James's text. The house was quiet when she arrived, almost eerily so. Rebecca walked through the room slowly, seeing their shared life through new eyes. The wedding photos on the mantel. The kitchen where they'd cooked Sunday dinners. In the master bedroom, she noticed immediate changes. James's cologne missing from the dresser. Some of his clothes gone from the closet. And on her pillow, a handwritten note. Rebecca, I know you're angry and hurt. I handled this badly. Let's talk about a fair resolution without letting lawyers take everything we've built. J. She crumpled the note and threw it in the trash. Then she methodically began gathering important personal items, her jewelry, family photos, crucial documents, and sentimental possessions she couldn't bear to lose if James decided to retaliate. As she packed, Rebecca noticed something odd. James's lockbox was missing from his closet shelf. He'd always kept important documents there, his passport, birth certificate, social security card, and what he'd once referred to as emergency cash. She went to their home office and checked their financial tracking software. She quickly found what she was looking for, a wire transfer from 3 days ago, $50,000 to an account she didn't recognize. Rebecca took screenshots, emailed them to herself and Patricia, then shut down the computer. Her phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. Investigator confirmed Wilson Ventures LLC. Also found second offshore entity established last month. Call me. The second entity is called Summit Holdings, Patricia explained when Rebecca called. It received a wire transfer of $250,000 from Wilson Tech Solutions 6 weeks ago, labeled as international consultant fees. No record of any actual consulting services. He's been planning this for months, Rebecca realized. The affair, the divorce, hiding assets, all carefully orchestrated. But his careful planning just became his downfall. We now have documented evidence of what appears to be both hidden marital assets and corporate financial impropriety. The conference room at 4 p.m. felt charged with tension. James and Richard Hoffman arrived precisely on time, both looking considerably more serious than during their previous meeting. Thank you for meeting again so quickly, Patricia began. Has your client had time to consider our settlement proposal? Hoffman nodded. We have a counterproposal. Mr. Wilson is prepared to transfer the marital home, 50% of all investment and retirement accounts, and make a cash payment of $5.5 million for Mrs. Wilson's indirect contributions to Wilson Tech Solutions. Patricia skimmed the document. This is closer to our position, but still inadequate given the circumstances. With all due respect, Hoffman replied, while my client acknowledges his personal failings in the marriage, Mrs. Wilson's claim to Wilson Tech goes beyond what courts typically award. Perhaps, Patricia said, but courts take a particularly dim view of spouses who attempt to hide assets during divorce proceedings, or those who potentially misappropriate company funds for personal use. She laid out the evidence methodically, the property transfer documents for the cabin, the formation papers for Wilson Ventures LLC, bank records showing transfers to the Cayman Islands, and documentation of the Executive Discretionary Fund. With each new document, James's face grew paler. Richard Hoffman's expression morphed from confidence to dismay to barely concealed fury, directed not at Patricia or Rebecca, but at his own client. Mrs. Danvers, Hoffman said, may I request a brief recess to confer with my client? In the hallway outside, Rebecca leaned against the wall, suddenly exhausted. He really thought he'd get away with all of it. They usually do, Patricia replied. Men like James Wilson are used to controlling narratives. They simply cannot conceive of losing control. 10 minutes stretched to 20. Finally, Hoffman opened the door, his professional demeanor barely masking his evident anger. We're prepared to accept your original settlement terms, he announced flatly. All of them? Patricia clarified. The home, 50% of liquid assets, and either 30% ownership of Wilson Tech or $7 million? Yes, Hoffman confirmed, with one additional condition. complete confidentiality regarding all matters discussed in these proceedings. Patricia smiled thinly. We'll need to add our own conditions. First, full financial disclosure, verified by our forensic accountant. Second, Mr. Wilson must replenish any company funds that were improperly diverted for personal use. Hoffman glanced back at James, who gave a terse nod. Agreed. We'll have the settlement agreement drafted by tomorrow. As they returned to outline the terms, Rebecca found herself looking directly at James. The man across the table wasn't the charming, confident husband she'd known for 15 years. He looked diminished somehow, cornered and desperate. James met her gaze briefly, then looked away. In that moment, Rebecca realized something important: she no longer loved him. The pain was still there, the sense of betrayal sharp as ever, but the love that had sustained her through 15 years of marriage had vanished completely. It wasn't just his infidelity that had killed it, but the calculated cruelty of his exit strategy, the text message dismissal, the immediate installment of Sophia in their home, the elaborate financial deception. He had revealed himself to be someone she could never have loved had she known the truth from the beginning. As the lawyers outlined the settlement terms, Rebecca felt something unexpected bloom inside her chest. Not happiness, that would come later. Not closure, that was still a distant shore. No, what she felt in that moment was the first flicker of freedom. The meeting concluded with handshakes between the attorneys. James attempted to approach Rebecca as they left, but she deliberately turned away, walking out with Patricia. It's over, Patricia said as they rode the elevator down. The paperwork will take a few weeks, but essentially, it's done. Rebecca nodded, a complex mixture of emotions washing through her. I never expected it to resolve so quickly. Most divorces don't, Patricia acknowledged. But most divorces don't involve such clear evidence of misconduct. Outside the building, Rebecca took a deep breath of spring air, feeling as though she'd been underwater for days. What happens now? She asked, suddenly unsure of her next steps. Patricia smiled, her grandmotherly face kind. Now, my dear, you begin rebuilding. One day at a time. 6 weeks later, Rebecca stood in her newly purchased downtown Boston condominium, watching the movers arrange her furniture. The spacious corner unit with floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the harbor that still took her breath away each morning. Where would you like this box, ma'am? A mover asked, holding a container labeled photos. In the study, please, Rebecca replied. She had decided not to unpack those just yet, the framed memories of 15 years with James. Eventually she would sort through them, keeping those with friends and family, discarding the rest. But not today. Her phone buzzed with a text from Megan. Housewarming dinner still on for tonight? Should I bring anything besides champagne? Rebecca smiled, typing back, absolutely. Just champagne and good vibes. Emily arrives at 6. Emily had flown in from Chicago to help her sister settle into her new place and new life. The divorce had been finalized with remarkable speed, thanks to James's eagerness to avoid further scrutiny of his financial dealings. Rebecca had taken the $7 million settlement rather than partial ownership of Wilson Tech. A clean break felt more important than ongoing entanglement. As the movers completed their work, Rebecca wandered through her new home. She had selected every piece herself, the sleek modern furniture a deliberate departure from the traditional style she had shared with James. The place was smaller than their Brookline home, but it was entirely hers. No compromises, no memories lurking in corners. Her phone rang, Patricia Danvers calling. Rebecca, I've just received an interesting call from Richard Hoffman, Patricia said after their initial greetings. James isn't contesting something, is he? Rebecca asked, immediately tensing. No, quite the opposite. He wants to know if you'd consider signing additional confidentiality agreements regarding the offshore accounts and the cabin purchase. Apparently, the company is in talks with a major investor, and they're conducting extensive due diligence. Rebecca sat on her new sofa, considering this. What would these additional agreements entail? Essentially, you'd promise never to discuss those specific financial matters with anyone, particularly business journalists or competing firms. In exchange, he's offering an additional $500,000. He's still worried I'll expose him, Rebecca realized. Even after everything is settled. Men like James never truly believe they'll face consequences, Patricia replied. They're always looking for insurance. What do you advise? From a purely financial perspective, it's easy money for signing a document. From an ethical standpoint, Patricia paused. Well, that's a more personal decision. After they hung up, Rebecca walked to her windows, gazing out at the harbor. James was still trying to control the narrative, to ensure his secrets remained buried. $500,000 to maintain her silence. Her doorbell rang, Emily, arriving early with what appeared to be several shopping bags. I couldn't resist, her sister announced, sweeping in and dropping the bags on the kitchen island. Housewarming essentials, wine glasses, premium coffee, and the most ridiculously expensive scented candles I could find. Rebecca laughed, embracing her. You're amazing. And early. The hotel room was depressing, and I figured you could use help unpacking. Emily glanced around admiringly. This place is spectacular, Becca. Seriously. It's starting to feel like home, Rebecca admitted. Emily began unpacking her purchases. So what's new? Any word from the jackass? Rebecca told her about Patricia's call. Emily's expression darkened. He's still trying to manipulate you, she said, shaking her head. Buying your silence now. It's just business for him, Rebecca replied. The company is everything. His reputation is everything. What are you going to do? I haven't decided. Part of me thinks I should just take the money. It's a significant sum for signing a piece of paper. Another part feels like it would be giving him control again, in some small way. Emily arranged the new wine glasses on a shelf. Remember what you told me last month? That the most important thing you gained from this divorce wasn't the money, but your self-respect? Rebecca nodded. The conversation had been during a late-night phone call, shortly after the settlement was finalized. Well, Emily continued, what feels more respectful to yourself, taking his hush money, or making your decision independent of his needs? Before Rebecca could answer, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Rebecca, it's Sophia Diaz. Could we meet for coffee? There's something important you should know. Rebecca showed the message to Emily, whose eyebrows shot up. The mistress strikes again. What could she possibly want now? I don't know, Rebecca admitted. But she did provide crucial evidence for the settlement. Out of self-interest, Emily reminded her. She was worried about being implicated in his financial schemes. True. Rebecca considered for a moment, then typed a response. I'm busy settling into my new place. What is this regarding? The reply came quickly. The investor group looking at Wilson Tech James is misrepresenting the company's value. I thought you should know before you sign anything else. Rebecca's pulse quickened. She showed the message to Emily. How would she even know you're being asked to sign anything? Emily asked suspiciously. Good question. Rebecca called Patricia. Did you discuss James's request for additional confidentiality with anyone besides me? Rebecca asked when the attorney answered. Absolutely not, Patricia replied firmly. Why do you ask? Rebecca explained Sophia's text. Patricia was silent for a moment. That's concerning on several levels, she finally said. First, it suggests information is leaking from somewhere, either Hoffman's office or James himself. Second, if what she's suggesting is true, James may be committing securities fraud. Should I meet with her? Cautiously, yes. But in a public place, and I'd suggest recording the conversation with her knowledge and consent. Massachusetts is a two-party state, remember. After hanging up, Rebecca texted Sophia back. I can meet tomorrow at Thinking Cup on Newberry, 10 a.m. We'll be recording our conversation for my records. That's fine, came Sophia's reply. I have nothing to hide. Unlike James. The next morning, Rebecca arrived at the coffee shop early, selecting a table in the corner where their conversation wouldn't be easily overheard. She wore a simple black dress with a camel-colored blazer, professional but not intimidating. She wanted Sophia to feel comfortable sharing whatever information she had. Sophia arrived precisely at 10, looking markedly different from their last encounter. She was polished again, her dark hair styled in a sleek bob, wearing a tailored pantsuit that suggested a woman who had regained her footing. Thank you for meeting me, Sophia said as she sat down. I wasn't sure you would. I'm curious what you think I should know, Rebecca replied, placing her phone on the table. I'm recording now, as I mentioned. Sophia nodded. That's fine. I'll get straight to the point. James is in talks with Vertex Capital about a major investment in Wilson Tech. The deal would value the company at $40 million. Rebecca kept her expression neutral, though internally she was stunned. That's double the valuation from 2 months ago. Exactly. And completely fraudulent. Sophia opened her bag and removed a folder. These are internal projections James created specifically for Vertex. They show revenue growth of 35% year-over-year for the past 3 years. She slid the documents across the table. Rebecca examined them briefly. The actual growth was closer to 20%, Sophia continued. Still impressive, but not the hockey stick curve he's presenting. Rebecca looked up. How do you have access to these? I'm still in contact with people at Wilson Tech. The CFO is an old friend who's increasingly uncomfortable with James's methods. Sophia hesitated. There's more. James has been booking phantom sales to inflate current quarter revenues. Contracts that don't actually exist. That's securities fraud, Rebecca said quietly. Yes. And the reason I'm telling you this is because he's apparently asked you to sign additional confidentiality agreements about his financial activities. If you do, and this scheme collapses, you could potentially be viewed as complicit. Rebecca studied Sophia carefully. Why are you really doing this? Sophia met her gaze directly. Partially to protect myself. I've given a statement to your lawyer about what I knew, but I want to be completely clear that I had no involvement in or knowledge of these new financial manipulations. And the other part? Sophia looked down at her coffee cup. Guilt, probably. Accountability. I participated in the destruction of your marriage. I can't undo that, but I can at least ensure you don't get caught in James's newest deception. Rebecca was silent for a moment, processing this information and Sophia's apparent sincerity. Have you taken this information to anyone else? The board of Wilson Tech? Regulators? Not yet, Sophia admitted. I wanted to speak with you first, given your recent settlement, but I'm considering it. You understand that could destroy the company? I do. But James's actions are going to destroy it anyway, eventually. It's just a question of how many people get hurt in the process. After Sophia left, Rebecca remained at the table, thinking. If what Sophia had shared was accurate, and the documentation certainly looked legitimate, James was on a self-destructive path that could end in criminal charges. And he wanted Rebecca contractually bound to silence before it all exploded. She called Patricia and explained everything, forwarding photos she had taken of Sophia's documents. This is extremely serious, Patricia said. If authenticated, this information suggests criminal activity. I strongly advise against signing any additional agreements with James. In fact, we should consider whether you have any legal obligation to report this information. Would that nullify our settlement? No, your settlement is final and based on circumstances and knowledge at that time. But there's a moral question here as well. Rebecca thought about the investors being misled, the employees whose careers and livelihoods would be affected when the truth emerged. She thought about James, still believing he could manipulate outcomes, control narratives, escape consequences. I need to think about this, she told Patricia. Can you verify these documents somehow? I'll have my investigator look into them. In the meantime, don't respond to James or Hoffman about the confidentiality request. That evening, Rebecca hosted her housewarming dinner as planned. Emily, Megan, and 2 colleagues from Morgan Stanley filled her new home with conversation and laughter. She tried to push thoughts of James and his potential legal troubles aside, focusing instead on the friends who had supported her through the darkest period of her life. A toast, Emily announced, raising her champagne glass. To new beginnings, to freedom, and to my sister, the strongest woman I know. To Rebecca, the others echoed, glasses clinking. Later, after her guests had departed and Emily had returned to her hotel, Rebecca sat on her balcony overlooking the twinkling lights of Boston Harbor. Her phone buzzed with an email from Patricia. My investigator spoke with a former Wilson Tech finance employee. The documents appear legitimate. James has been systematically misrepresenting company finances for at least 6 months. The Vertex Capital deal is scheduled to close next week. We need to discuss your options tomorrow. Rebecca stared at the message for a long time. Then she made a decision that surprised even herself. She didn't want revenge. She didn't want to be the instrument of James's destruction, even if he deserved it. What she wanted, more than anything, was to be free of him completely, not bound by either resentment or confidentiality agreements. She typed a reply to Patricia, I will not sign any additional agreements. As for the potential fraud, I believe we have an ethical obligation to notify the appropriate authorities. Let's discuss specifics tomorrow. With that, she put down her phone and looked out at the harbor. For the first time since receiving that text ordering her not to come home, Rebecca felt truly at peace with her decisions. James had set in motion his own downfall long before she discovered his deception. All she had done was refuse to be its victim. The next morning, Rebecca met with Patricia to discuss their approach. They agreed that Rebecca would provide the information to the Securities and Exchange Commission through their whistleblower program, which would protect her identity while allowing investigators to examine James's activities. Once we submit this, Patricia cautioned, we can't control what happens next. The SEC might investigate quietly, or they might move quickly with visible enforcement actions. I understand, Rebecca said. But I can't knowingly allow investors to be defrauded. As they were completing the SEC submission forms, Patricia's phone rang. Her expression changed as she listened to the caller. When? She asked, making notes. I see. Yes, she's with me now. We'll discuss it. After hanging up, Patricia looked up at Rebecca. That was my contact at the State Attorney General's office. They've just received a whistleblower complaint about Wilson Tech Solutions. Specifically, about James Wilson's financial practices. Someone beat us to it, Rebecca realized. Sophia? Possibly, or perhaps the CFO she mentioned. Either way, the complaint has triggered a preliminary investigation. Trading of Wilson Tech's existing shares has been suspended pending review. Rebecca's phone began buzzing with text notifications. Former colleagues at Wilson Tech were messaging her about the trading suspension, wondering if she knew anything. Then came a text from James himself, the first direct communication since their final settlement meeting. Did you do this? Everything we built is being destroyed. I hope you're satisfied. Rebecca showed the message to Patricia, who shook her head in disbelief. Still blaming others for consequences of his own actions, she remarked. Classic. Should I respond? Absolutely not. Any communication could be misconstrued at this point. Rebecca nodded, then blocked James's number. That simple action, preventing him from reaching her directly, felt surprisingly empowering. Over the next few days, the story broke in the financial press. The SEC and state authorities were investigating Wilson Tech Solutions for potential securities fraud and financial misrepresentation. Vertex Capital had withdrawn from acquisition talks. The company's stock, when trading resumed, had lost over 60% of its value. Rebecca watched the situation unfold from a distance, neither gloating nor regretful. She had taken her settlement in cash rather than company equity, a decision that now seemed almost prescient. She had moved on with her life, focusing on her career and rebuilding her social circle. One afternoon, about 2 weeks after the investigation became public, Rebecca received a call from an unfamiliar number. Against her better judgment, she answered. Rebecca. It was Richard Hoffman, James's attorney. I was hoping we might speak briefly. Mr. Hoffman, I have nothing to discuss with you or your client, Rebecca replied firmly. James is no longer my client, Hoffman said, surprising her. I've withdrawn from representing him in light of recent events. This call is actually of a more personal nature. Rebecca remained silent, waiting. I want to apologize, he continued. When I first took James's case, I believed his version of events. That you were being unreasonable, vindictive. I've since come to understand that wasn't the case. Why are you telling me this? Professional integrity, I suppose. I've been practicing family law for 30 years, Mrs. Wilson. I've represented my share of difficult clients. But I've never encountered someone who lied so comprehensively to their own counsel. It was a humbling experience. After the call ended, Rebecca felt a strange sense of closure. Hoffman's apology wasn't particularly important to her, but it represented something significant, objective acknowledgement that she had been wronged, that her response hadn't been vindictive or excessive, but reasonable and justified. That evening, she sat on her balcony with a glass of wine, watching the sunset over Boston Harbor. Her phone buzzed with a text from Megan. Have you seen the news? James just resigned as CEO. Board appointed interim leadership pending investigation results. Rebecca hadn't seen it, but she wasn't surprised. The walls were closing in on James as the consequences of his choices became impossible to escape. Just saw it, she replied to Megan. Not sure how to feel about it all. Vindicated? Relieved? Indifferent? Megan suggested. Rebecca considered this. Maybe a little of each. Mostly, I'm just glad to be on the other side of it all. And she was. The painful text that had once shattered her world now seemed like a distant memory, the beginning of a difficult journey that had ultimately led her to a better place. James had meant to discard her with those 11 cold words. Instead, he had inadvertently freed her to discover her own strength. A week later, Rebecca was meeting with a client when her assistant interrupted with an urgent message. Patricia Danvers was on the phone and insisted it couldn't wait. Rebecca excused herself and took the call in her private office. Rebecca, I wanted you to hear this from me first, Patricia began. James Wilson has been arrested on securities fraud charges. The SEC found evidence of falsified financial records going back over a year. Rebecca sank into her chair. Arrested? I didn't expect it to move this quickly. The evidence was apparently overwhelming once they started looking. Multiple employees came forward after the initial complaint. It seems your ex-husband had created quite an elaborate fiction. After hanging up, Rebecca sat motionless, absorbing this development. James, who had built his company and reputation on projected strength and success, was now facing criminal charges. The man who had dismissively texted her not to come home was now being led to a different kind of temporary housing. She felt no satisfaction, no vindictive pleasure. Only a profound sense of how drastically life could change, how completely the mighty could fall, and how grateful she was to have escaped before the collapse. That evening, Emily called from Chicago. "I just saw the news about James," she said. "How are you feeling?" "Strangely detached," Rebecca admitted. "Like I'm watching a movie about someone else's life." "That's probably healthy," Emily observed. "It means you've really moved on." "I think I have," Rebecca agreed. "For the first time in months, I went a whole day without thinking about him or the divorce until Patricia called." "That's progress." "Speaking of progress, any updates on that promotion?" Rebecca smiled. In the midst of everything, she had thrown herself into her work at Morgan Stanley, earning recognition from senior management and consideration for a director position. "Final interviews next week," she said. "I think my chances are good." After they hung up, Rebecca walked through her condo, appreciating the space she had created for herself. The furniture arranged exactly as she wanted. The art she had selected that reflected her own taste. The quiet that wasn't loneliness but peace. Her phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. "Just a reminder that reporters may try to contact you about James's arrest. You're under no obligation to speak with them. Refer all inquiries to me." Rebecca appreciated the attorney's ongoing protectiveness, but she wasn't concerned. The press had already tried reaching her when the investigation first became public, and she had maintained her silence. She had no intention of becoming part of the narrative now. 3 days later, Rebecca was leaving her office when she noticed a familiar figure waiting near the building entrance. Sophia Diaz, looking nervous but determined. "I'm sorry to ambush you like this," Sophia said as Rebecca approached. "I called your office, but they wouldn't put me through." "What do you want, Sophia?" Rebecca asked, not unkindly but with clear boundaries. "I wanted to tell you in person, I was the one who filed the whistleblower complaint against James, not because of you or anything related to our situation, but because it was the right thing to do." Rebecca studied her face. "Why tell me this?" "Because I thought you might wonder if you caused what's happening to James now." "You didn't. His own actions did." Sophia shifted uncomfortably. "And I suppose I wanted you to know that people can change. Can try to be better than their worst mistakes." After a moment, Rebecca nodded. "I appreciate you telling me. I hope you find what you're looking for, Sophia." It wasn't forgiveness exactly, some betrayals went too deep for that, but it was acknowledgement of Sophia's attempt at amends. As Rebecca walked away, she felt the last weight of her past with James lifting from her shoulders. The future stretched before her, unwritten and full of possibility. A future that had seemed unimaginable in that grocery store aisle when she'd first read those 11 cruel words. A future she had fought for and won, not just with legal strategies and financial settlements, but with courage and self-respect. His text had told her not to come home. In the end, she had built a better one. 1 year to the day after James's infamous text, Rebecca stood in her office at Morgan Stanley, admiring her newly installed nameplate, Rebecca Wilson, Managing Director. The promotion had come through 3 months after James's arrest, recognition of both her financial acumen and her leadership during a challenging period. Her phone buzzed with a calendar reminder, dinner with Emily, who had flown in from Chicago to celebrate what they now jokingly called Rebecca's Independence Day. As she gathered her things to leave, her assistant knocked on the door. "Ms. Wilson, there's a delivery for you." She handed Rebecca a small package wrapped in brown paper. Rebecca examined it cautiously. The return address was Patricia Danvers's law office. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note from Patricia. "Rebecca, the trial transcripts were just released. Thought you might want these for closure. James was sentenced to 5 years this morning. Call if you want to discuss." "Patricia." Rebecca slipped the USB drive into her desk drawer. Perhaps she would look at it someday, but not today. Today was about celebrating how far she had come, not revisiting the past. The restaurant Emily had chosen was upscale without being stuffy, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Boston skyline. Rebecca arrived to find her sister already seated, champagne on ice beside the table. "There she is, the powerhouse," Emily exclaimed, rising to embrace Rebecca. "Managing Director Wilson, ready to take over the financial world." Rebecca laughed, settling into her chair. "One step at a time. How was your flight?" "Fine, but never mind that. Today is about you." Emily poured champagne for both of them. 1 year ago, you were standing in a grocery store with your world falling apart. And look at you now. Rebecca raised her glass. "To unexpected new beginnings. And to jackasses who accidentally do us favors by showing their true colors," Emily added with a grin. As they clinked glasses, Rebecca felt a surge of gratitude for her sister's unwavering support. Emily had been her rock throughout the divorce, offering both practical help and emotional sustenance when Rebecca needed it most. "I got something in the mail today," Rebecca said after they ordered the trial transcripts. James was sentenced to 5 years. Emily's eyes widened. "Wow. That's significant for white-collar crime. How do you feel about it?" Rebecca considered the question. "Detached, mostly. It's like hearing about a distant acquaintance's troubles. Sad in an abstract way, but not personally affecting." "That's healthy," Emily nodded. "Means you've truly moved on." "I have," Rebecca agreed, "though I'm still processing some things, like how I missed so many warning signs over the years." The waiter arrived with their appetizers, momentarily pausing the conversation. After he left, Emily leaned forward. "You missed them because you trusted him. That's not a character flaw, Becca." "No, but there's a difference between trust and willful blindness." Rebecca sipped her champagne. "I ignored things that, in retrospect, were obvious red flags. The password-protected phone. The unexplained expenses. The way he gradually stopped including me in business discussions." "Hindsight is always clearer," Emily reminded her. "And relationships require trust. You can't live in constant suspicion." Rebecca smiled wryly. "Says the woman who makes all her boyfriends submit to a background check." "That's not suspicion, that's due diligence," Emily countered with a laugh. "And may I remind you, it's kept me out of trouble more than once." Their main courses arrived, and the conversation shifted to lighter topics: Emily's new promotion at her architectural firm, their plans to vacation together in Italy later that year, their parents' upcoming anniversary celebration. Over dessert, Emily asked the question she'd been tactfully avoiding all evening. "So, any developments in the romance department? It's been a year, and you're officially a catch." Rebecca shook her head. "Not ready. Maybe not for a while yet." "That's fair," Emily acknowledged. "But don't let what James did make you close off that part of your life forever." "It's not that," Rebecca said thoughtfully. "I'm just enjoying being on my own right now, learning who I am without defining myself in relation to someone else." As they left the restaurant, Emily linked her arm through Rebecca's. "Well, whoever you are, I'm pretty impressed with her." Back in her condo that night, Rebecca stood on her balcony gazing at the harbor lights. 1 year. It seemed both an eternity and an instant. She thought about the woman she had been that day in the grocery store, devastated, disbelieving, feeling as though her life had ended. How could she have known then that James's cruel dismissal would become the catalyst for the most transformative year of her life? Her phone buzzed with a text from Megan. "Just heard the news about James's sentencing. You okay?" Rebecca typed back, "More than okay. Having a lovely evening celebrating with Emily. Talk tomorrow?" Megan's reply came quickly, "Perfect. And don't forget Saturday's charity gala. You promised to be my +1. Rebecca smiled, remembering her commitment to attend the Children's Hospital fundraiser where Megan would be receiving an award for her pediatric work. Turning back to the view, Rebecca reflected on how her social circle had evolved over the past year. Some couple friends had drifted away after the divorce, taking James's side or simply uncomfortable with the changed dynamic. But others, like Megan, had drawn closer, revealing the depth and authenticity of those relationships. She had also formed new friendships, with colleagues who had supported her professionally during the turmoil, with neighbors in her building, with other members of the divorce support group Patricia had recommended in those early, raw days. Her life felt richer now, more authentically hers. The path forward wasn't always clear, but it was hers to determine. The next morning, Rebecca woke to an email from Richard Hoffman, James's former attorney. "Ms. Wilson, I imagine you've heard about the sentencing. While I'm no longer representing your ex-husband, I felt compelled to reach out. During yesterday's proceedings, James made a statement to the court that I thought might interest you. He acknowledged the harm he caused not just to investors, but to you personally. It seemed, perhaps for the first time, genuinely remorseful. This isn't meant to change anything between you, merely to provide a possible piece of closure. Respectfully, Richard Hoffman." Rebecca read the email twice, unsure what to make of it. Was James truly remorseful, or simply performing contrition for the judge in hopes of a lighter sentence? And even if his remorse was genuine, did it matter after everything he had done? She decided it didn't, at least not in any way that affected her life now. Whatever evolution James might be experiencing in the face of consequences was his journey, not hers. At work that day, Rebecca found herself unusually productive, as if the news of James's sentencing had cleared the final lingering cobwebs from her mind. She conducted 2 client meetings, finalized a major investment strategy, and mentored a promising young financial advisor on her team. Her assistant knocked on her door late in the afternoon. Ms. Wilson, there's someone here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's important. She handed Rebecca a business card. Barbara Chen, SEC Enforcement Division. Rebecca frowned, confused. Send her in, please. Barbara Chen was a compact woman with sharp eyes and an air of quiet authority. She shook Rebecca's hand firmly. Thank you for seeing me without an appointment, Ms. Wilson. I apologize for the interruption, but I wanted to speak with you personally rather than through official channels. Of course, Rebecca gestured to the chairs in front of her desk. How can I help you? As you may know, the Securities and Exchange Commission has been conducting a thorough investigation of Wilson Tech Solutions following James Wilson's fraud conviction. Rebecca nodded. She had followed the case through news reports, though she had deliberately maintained her distance from the details. What you may not know, Chin continued, is that our investigation has uncovered a pattern of misconduct dating back nearly 3 years. We've been interviewing former employees, board members, and others connected to the company. Rebecca tensed slightly. I've been divorced from James for a year now. I'm not sure what insight I could offer. Actually, it's not information we're seeking, Chin said. It's recognition. The whistleblower complaint that initially triggered our investigation was crucial. Without it, James Wilson might have successfully completed the Vertex Capital fraud, hurting countless additional investors. She placed a folder on Rebecca's desk. This is a formal acknowledgement from the SEC's whistleblower office. While we understand you prefer to remain anonymous publicly, we wanted you to know that your actions prevented substantial financial harm. Rebecca stared at the folder, momentarily speechless. I think there's been a misunderstanding. I wasn't the initial whistleblower. Chen looked surprised. Our records indicate that a detailed complaint was filed from your attorney's office, with documentation that could only have come from someone with intimate knowledge of both Wilson Tech's finances and James Wilson's personal accounts. That wasn't me, Rebecca said firmly. I was planning to file a complaint after receiving information about the fraud, but someone else beat me to it. I assumed it was Sofia Diaz or perhaps someone from the company's finance department. Chen's expression shifted to one of professional neutrality. I see. Perhaps there was a miscommunication. In any case, the acknowledgement stands for your cooperation during the investigation. After Chen left, Rebecca sat at her desk, puzzled. She was certain she hadn't filed the initial whistleblower complaint. Sophia had claimed responsibility when they spoke outside Rebecca's office months ago, but Chen seemed equally certain the complaint had originated from Patricia's firm. She dialed Patricia's number. Did you file an SEC whistleblower complaint on my behalf? Rebecca asked when the attorney answered. Patricia was silent for a moment. Not exactly. When Sofia Diaz provided those documents about James's financial misrepresentations, I had my investigator verify them immediately. The evidence was compelling and suggested ongoing fraud that could harm many people. So you filed the complaint? I consulted with ethics counsel about my professional obligations. Given the documentation we possessed and the imminent Vertex deal, there was a clear duty to prevent ongoing fraud. Patricia paused. I had prepared the whistleblower submission for your review, but before we could file it formally, I learned the SEC had already received a complaint with similar information. From whom? That's the interesting part. My investigator's SEC contact wouldn't confirm the source, but hinted it came from Richard Hoffman's office. James's own attorney reported him? Rebecca was incredulous. Attorneys have ethical obligations that supersede client confidentiality in certain circumstances, specifically, when they have knowledge of ongoing fraud. If Hoffman discovered James was actively defrauding investors, he would have faced an ethical dilemma: withdraw from representation and report, or become potentially complicit. Rebecca thought about Hoffman's unexpected call after withdrawing from James's case, his comment about professional integrity. So everyone was trying to stop James, she mused. His lawyer, his girlfriend, his finance team, and me. People have different thresholds for tolerating deception, Patricia observed. James crossed all of them. After hanging up, Rebecca opened her desk drawer and looked at the USB drive containing the trial transcripts. Perhaps it was time to review them after all, not to revisit her pain, but to understand the full scope of what had happened, how James's deceptions had finally collapsed under their own weight. The charity gala on Saturday evening was elegant without being ostentatious, appropriate for an event benefiting a children's hospital. Rebecca wore a midnight blue gown that she had purchased specifically for the occasion, another small act of self-definition in her post-James life. Megan found her near the entrance, resplendent in emerald green. "You look amazing," she said, embracing Rebecca. "Thanks for coming. These events are always better with backup." "Happy to support the cause," Rebecca replied. And to see you receive your much-deserved recognition. They entered the ballroom, which had been transformed with soft lighting and tasteful decorations. Rebecca recognized several faces from Boston's business and medical communities, including a few former associates of James. She felt a momentary tension, wondering if they would be awkward around her, but the first few greetings were warm and genuine. "Rebecca Wilson," a voice called from nearby. She turned to see Thomas Blackwell, one of Boston's most prominent investment bankers and a former client of Wilson Tech. "Wonderful to see you. I've been meaning to reach out." "Mr. Blackwell," Rebecca smiled, extending her hand. "It's been a while." "Too long," he agreed. "And please, it's Thomas. I hear congratulations are in order, managing director at Morgan Stanley, quite an achievement." "Thank you. It's been an eventful year." Blackwell's expression grew more serious. "I can imagine. I want you to know that many of us in the business community distinguish completely between you and the situation with James. Your professional reputation remains impeccable." Rebecca was touched by his directness. "I appreciate that, Thomas. It means a lot. In fact," he continued, "Blackwell Partners is looking to diversify our wealth management relationships. Perhaps we could discuss potential synergies with Morgan Stanley?" "No pressure, of course." "I'd be delighted," Rebecca replied, genuinely surprised by the business overture. As the evening progressed, Rebecca had similar conversations with several other attendees, expressions of respect for her professional standing, subtle indications of business opportunities, and a clear message that she wasn't defined by her ex-husband's disgrace. During dinner, she found herself seated next to Dr. Jonathan Hayes, the hospital's chief of pediatric surgery and the evening's keynote speaker. Their conversation flowed easily from hospital funding challenges to market trends to their shared love of sailing. "Do you still get out on the water?" he asked. "Boston Harbor has some excellent day sailing." "Not as much as I'd like," Rebecca admitted. "It's been a while since I've had time." "The hospital maintains a small sailboat for staff use," Jonathan mentioned, "part of our wellness program. You'd be welcome to join me sometime, as Megan's friend." The offer was friendly rather than flirtatious, but Rebecca found herself considering it seriously. Sailing had been a passion before her marriage, one she had gradually abandoned as James's preferences took precedence. "I might take you up on that," she said. "I miss being on the water." Later, as they applauded Megan's gracious acceptance speech, Jonathan leaned over. "I meant what I said about sailing. No pressure, just an open invitation for whenever you're ready." Rebecca smiled. "I'll keep it in mind." After the gala, as Megan and Rebecca shared an Uber home, Megan gave her friend a speculative look. "So, you and Jonathan seem to hit it off." "We had a nice conversation," Rebecca acknowledged. "He offered to take me sailing. And? He's brilliant, kind, divorced for 3 years, and not remotely intimidated by successful women." Rebecca laughed. "Are you matchmaking, Dr. Harrison?" "Merely presenting relevant data points," Megan replied innocently. "What you do with that information is entirely up to you." "I'm not sure I'm ready," Rebecca admitted. "But I did enjoy talking with him." "That's a start," Megan said softly. "And there's no timeline for these things. Just promise me you won't let what happened with James close you off to possibilities forever." "I promise," Rebecca said, realizing she meant it. "When I'm ready." The following week brought a cascade of developments. 3 new clients reached out to Rebecca directly, specifically requesting her as their financial advisor. Morgan Stanley's executive committee invited her to join a strategic planning task force. And Patricia called with news about Wilson Tech. "The company has filed for bankruptcy protection," Patricia explained. "Without James's leadership and under the cloud of the fraud charges, they couldn't recover investor confidence." "What about the employees?" Rebecca asked, thinking of the many people she had known there. "Most of the technical teams have been hired by competitors. The board members resigned. The assets will likely be sold off piecemeal." It was the final chapter in the Wilson Tech story, a company that had once represented the future Rebecca and James were building together, now dissolving into corporate history. That evening, Rebecca finally found the emotional bandwidth to review the trial transcripts on the USB drive Patricia had sent. She poured a glass of wine and settled on her sofa, laptop open. The legal proceedings were largely technical, focused on the mechanisms of James's fraud rather than personal matters. But toward the end, she found what Hoffman had referenced, James's statement to the court before sentencing. "Your Honor," James had said, "I stand before you having lost everything that ever mattered to me, my company, my reputation, my freedom. But my greatest regret is the pain I caused to those who trusted me, particularly my former wife, Rebecca. When I sent her that text telling her not to come home, I was trying to control the narrative, to end things on my terms. I never imagined she would respond with such dignity and strength, or that my actions would be exposed so completely. I can't undo the harm I've caused. I can only acknowledge it and hope that someday, those I've hurt might find it in their hearts to forgive me, though I know I don't deserve it. Rebecca closed the laptop, unsure what to feel. The statement seemed sincere, yet also self-serving, typical James, finding the most advantageous posture even in disgrace. But it didn't matter. Whatever journey James was on now, genuine remorse or calculated performance, it had no bearing on Rebecca's life. She had moved beyond needing his apology or acknowledgement. She walked to her balcony and looked out at the harbor, thinking about Jonathan's sailing invitation, the new clients, the expanding horizons of her career. The future stretched before her, bright with possibility. Her phone buzzed with a text from Emily, "Just checking on you after the sentencing news. You doing okay?" Rebecca smiled and typed back, "Better than okay. I think I might take up sailing again." Emily's response came quickly, "That's my girl. Always moving forward. Moving forward." That was exactly right. 1 year ago, a cruel text message had shattered Rebecca's world. Now she understood it had actually set her free to discover her own strength, rebuild on her own terms, and chart a course toward a future infinitely more authentic than the life she had lost. James had texted her not to come home, thinking he was discarding her from his life. Instead, he had inadvertently launched her toward a life that was truly her own, a life she wouldn't trade for anything, not even the comfortable illusion of their marriage. Rebecca raised her wine glass in a silent toast to unexpected journeys and the strength she had found along the way. Then she set the glass down, picked up her phone, and composed a text to Jonathan Hayes. "I'd like to take you up on that sailing invitation. When works for you?" It was time to feel the wind in her hair again, to chart a new course, one completely of her own choosing.